Hello and welcome to Almost in Agreement. This week's episode, we review whether the Supreme Court should have done what they did without doing what they did and stuff. I don't know. I'm sure we'll talk about it because it's probably the biggest national news story of the week. We're Almost in Agreement, almostagreement@gmail.com. Find us on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube. Go to our website, almostagreement.com. While you're there, you can check out my Voter Guide 22. I need to do some updates now that the primaries are over, which we'll talk about today as well. But so yeah, primaries are passed. We'll talk about some of the winners and losers in that race, as well as some other things and whatnot's going on. So anyway, go to Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Check us out there. Give us a like, share, friend, follow. Go to your favorite podcast provider, subscribe. Give a 5-star rating and review. That helps other people hear about us. It's been a long day. If you guys checked out the episode I did last night, that was extra fun. So you should definitely go back and look at that one because it's an interesting look into how the parties work locally. So anyway, Almost in Agreement. Almost in Agreement at gmail.com, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, that whole thing. Here we go. Sam and I are going to do a show. Try to get the guys in from Nashville. We'll see what's up. We'll go from there. Sam Lemma, what's up, brother?
What's going on?
Wasabi, as you say. You know, this and that, things and whatnots.
This and that.
Yeah, last night, well, I guess 2 nights ago when this releases, but last night officially because today is Saturday, but Friday night I had Matt Shears and Randy Pace on again together.
Yeah. How'd that go?
Well, Matt was homesick. He has the COVID. But he was feeling up to doing a Zoom in, so he Zoomed in, and Randy was in the room, and we chatted about stuff. Yeah. And I mean, just like any good episode for me, I know less coming out of it than I did going in. You know, it's the same shit. I mean, you know, I've been railing about how this primary's fucked up and how this system's kind of screwy about trying to get us access, and people like me who consider themselves independent-minded are technically having to break the law in order to vote in a primary. And when I want to vote for sheriff and there's only a Republican primary for sheriff, I have to make the decision on whether or not I want to take my chances on a misdemeanor or whatever. And so, you know, and like really what it was is I started listening to it back to earlier today while I was running some errands and stuff. And I mean, I still don't know what it means. I don't know what the parties stand for. Like Matt was talking about how over time the parties will shift priorities and stuff like that. But I couldn't get either one of them to just be like, what is this? Where does the party say this is? Because the only thing that I know of the parties is whatever the other party said is wrong and we're right. Like that's how the party said. Like that's how I feel like the parties operate. Yeah. But it's like, what's the policy on this?
It's like we're not them.
Right.
It's like okay, well that puts a pretty broad category.
Right. That says what you're not. It doesn't say what you are. Yeah. You know, and it's just kind of like stuff like that. And I get it, you know, like I poked at Matt and I poked at Randy as well as far as both parties. It's like, you know, Democrats used to be the populist party. That was their kind of thing. They were the working man. That was a big chunk of their base. And it seems to me that as time has progressed, at least the Trumpian version of Republican was a much more populist version than the Democrats are putting out right now.
Yeah.
I mean, Hillary Clinton, like her or not, is not a particularly populist candidate for the Democrats, but they put her up anyway. Bernie's an actual like populist leftist Democrat, big socialist, but
I think he's hinted at possibly running again.
I did hear that, you know, because apparently it's the challenge of who gets to be the oldest president ever.
I think I did see that. I guess like if he would get inaugurated in 2025.
Well, Biden's the oldest president ever currently,
right?
And
but
so
not much, just barely beating out Trump when he got elected.
Right. Which then, you know, but Bernie's older than both of them. Right. So if they all three run next time around, which seems likely. I mean, again, like we've made this joke before, like the idea that you and I are supposed to, our working days are done and our value to society is done and we need to go on Social Security and retire at what, 60 now? Used to be 55, but that ain't the rule anymore.
No, it's 65.
65, whatever.
Right.
65. That's when that's what it's supposed to. You know, you've done your time.
That's when you're eligible for Social Security.
Right. You've done your time. Go out and retire. You know, live out those golden years, and you know, let the whippersnappers come in and take charge and do stuff.
Right.
Which is like true everywhere except politics. Like, what's the oldest like CEO of like a Fortune 500 company? I mean,
Warren Buffett's pretty old.
Yeah.
I don't think he's. I guess he's the CEO of Berkshire
Hathaway. Yeah. I don't know exactly how that one works out because it's an investment kind of
All right.
It's a fund investment.
Yes,
I did learn, and I apologize to the people that hate me that listen to Compass. Not that you're going to hear this anyway. I did interrupt for the first time on the Compass show yesterday. Because they were talking about Titans are getting a new stadium in Nashville, $2 billion dome stadium,
which they didn't ask for.
Do what?
Which they didn't ask for.
I didn't heard that part of it. I mean, but for Nashville's sake, you got to build the dome stadium because you want a Super Bowl. Nashville wants to host a Super Bowl. That's really what it comes down to.
Right.
And then all the other events go on. Like now, they'll host a Super Bowl in the dome stadium. They'll host a bunch of basketball tournament stuff.
Why does it have to be domed to be Super Bowl eligible stadium?
It doesn't have to be, but it does. I mean, the last 20 Super Bowls.
How are you going to have fireworks?
Are they above the stadium that nobody in the stadium can see? But like, I mean, of the last dozen Super Bowls or so, the only outdoor ones are Miami, Tampa, and San Francisco. Other than that, it's been like Minnesota, Indianapolis, Dome. Like Green Bay will never host a Super Bowl ever because Green Bay will never close in.
They don't have the seating capacity.
They do.
Oh, have they expanded? I thought it was one of the smaller stadiums.
It's pretty small, but it's still like 60 or 70,000. They'll never host a Super Bowl because nobody wants to fucking go sit in the cold except for Packers fans. Nobody wants to be in Green Bay early February.
Oh, was it February they have it? Oh.
Yeah, it used to be late January, early February. Either way, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So anyway, the Compass guys were talking about that and how that kind of the financing things. And it was a reader question about kind of some of these TIFs and all these different programs and incentives that governments put out. And so it shifted back and forth, and they were talking about the multi-use stadium in the Old City project,
right? And
that when they issue the bonds for it to get the funding to do whatever, and I was like, hey, I'm sorry, when they issue these bonds, are they like, can I buy one? They're like, yeah, like when the Sports Authority will issue these bonds and they'll sell them to the public, anybody who wants them. And it'll be one bond for however much it is, and they'll sell however many it is to get to that $65 million mark or whatever the target number is. So they'll sell 65 bonds for $1 million each. Probably not the way they're going to do it, but just for the math's sake of it, they'll sell however many bonds at probably I'd say $100 to $1,000 each. But again, I don't know how they'll do it. But I'm gonna buy one. I'm gonna try to buy one. Maybe buy each of the boys one, and it'll mature by the time they're. Oldest just turned 12, so it'll mature by the time they're my age. And so over that period of time, that $1,000 bond will grow into, and it'll be paid back at whatever percentage over time.
Right.
So that was my exciting news of the week is that
you could buy into the stadiums.
Right. Which
that's
again,
just for Nashville, or they did bonds?
No, that's
for
what they're talking
the
about
local
one here.
Okay.
That was my specific question in that conversation. There's a couple of different things that they're going to do in Nashville to pay for it. Like the Titans themselves are going to pay like $700 million. It's a $2 billion stadium. They're going to raise hotel motel tax in.
I think I did see that about Nashville.
In Metro Nashville or whatever by like 1% or something like that, which they think will earn some near $1 billion over 20 years or something like that. So that'll pay a good chunk of it. And then some other programs are going to get the other couple $100 million.
Yeah. I thought I'd read like a story or two about, I think the Titans were asking for maybe like a renovation of the stadium. And then it kind of seemed like they kind of came over top and like, why don't we just build you guys a new stadium? Because, I mean, like you said, from the city's perspective, they could then possibly host a Super Bowl or other events there in an enclosed stadium.
They'll get March Madness stuff that goes on in there. There's plenty of stuff they can do with it. There's usually, Music City Bowl.
You still do March Madness inside Bridgestone.
Yeah, but like, they do a lot of it in Indianapolis in the Lucas Oil Stadium, which is the football field, because it's a bigger stadium and you can seat more people.
I think from the basketball perspective that the court would be so much smaller compared to the field size.
I mean, you can fit like 4 courts on
a
football field.
Which I mean, as much as like the NHL Stadium Series seems really cool, but at the same time, like if you're in the stands,
it sucks. Yeah, I mean, it's got to suck.
How can you see shit?
Right, because nothing's built for it. I mean, none of the camera booths are set up correctly for the sport you're watching. the event you're watching. They're set up for the game the building was built for.
You just got to hope they have a really good jumbotron that you can watch the whole time.
Right. Which I guess, I mean, again, that's part of the dome part of it, because that is, again, for the NFL's sake, 4 Super Bowls and 4 major events. Having the dome stadium cuts out so many variables. It makes lighting easier. It makes camera work easier. It makes audio easier. It makes the weather irrelevant.
Right. So
I get it, I guess, why you would want to do it, but I don't know. I think it's kind of lame that everything's getting domed. Especially, in Nashville, it's not like it's super hot or super cold really ever.
Right.
It's not like it's not a Green Bay, which Green Bay sells out when it's 4 degrees outside.
I guess I'd be curious to see what the difference in cost in a stadium versus a domed stadium. How much more that dome adds.
Right, but I think
for the prospect of possibly having a Super Bowl that probably wouldn't come back for at least another 10 years.
They'll get a couple out of it, I'd say, before it's retired. I mean, they schedule like 3 or 4 years out. It's like the next 3 or 4 Super Bowls are already scheduled.
When was the last time it was repeated?
I mean, they did. Where was it? Like, it's like every new stadium, every new dome at least gets it. Yeah. Like almost automatic. Like 2 years after the new stadium opens, you get a Super Bowl.
Yeah. How coincidental.
But I think too with Nashville and Nashville's growth on the scene and all that kind of stuff, I think there's a couple of factors that kind of make it make sense. I don't know the way deep down rabbit hole details or whatever, but with the tax situation and stuff that's going on in the state of Tennessee, and with the growth that's going on in the state of Tennessee, I think this is an opportune time to strike, I guess, for lack of a better word. Get out ahead of it.
Their soccer team
has its own stadium.
Yeah. They just had their first game, I think, last week or week before, which they tied, which I guess is better than losing for their first game. But I did read that, I guess, the parking lot for the stadium isn't very big.
Yeah.
Holds like 4,000 cars or some shit like that.
I mean, that's one of the things, too. I mean, I think if you're going to spend billions of dollars in Nashville, I think some sort of light rail is it's time. Because I think to me, like what has been the complaint in Knoxville, and I still think is one of those complaints that happens in Knoxville that I hate, is we don't have enough hotels and we don't have enough parking downtown.
Okay. Let's say we have plenty of hotels.
Right. And we have plenty of parking.
Downtown, but I mean...
And we have plenty of that downtown, too.
We're not that far from downtown.
I mean, AJ is going to be... They're turning the AJ into a hotel. And that whole giant project.
Right, but it's not going to be a big hotel.
I mean, it's still a decent hotel. There's plenty. I think there's enough hotel rooms, but again, I think the issue is that, like you're getting ready to say, is like Merchants, Emory doesn't have that many, but Merchants Drive has a ton. You have all sorts of stuff out here on the Kingston Pike 40 West side, has hotels like Cedar Bluff. How many hotels are at Cedar Bluff?
Right.
And it's like
and Parkside.
Right.
Which is right next to it, yeah.
Right, and so it's like a big event.
Like I've said it before, I don't know how some of those hotels stay in business. I was like, there can't be that many people that are staying in these hotels that often.
I don't know. I mean, there must be, because we don't have enough.
Well, they keep changing names, so that makes me wonder that...
That's a fair point. But I mean, again, I do think we are we are a very active city. We have a lot of stuff going on fairly regularly. We have a lot of events, we have a lot of concerts and stuff like that. We've
got the Bass Classics coming back to Knoxville.
Right. But with the hotels and stuff, too, the thing is you'll have people come up from not that far away. Like my sister-in-law from Cleveland, Tennessee, her and her, I guess no ex, I don't remember what the story is there. Anyway, her and the man in her life at the time came up here for their anniversary. They'd come up here and stay in a hotel and party in the big city of Knoxville because they're from Cleveland, Tennessee.
Right.
So you get plenty of that, too. And that changes, like it's not like a big event that they're coming to see here. Or they come up here for a concert. And the concert schedule's pretty concert, comedy, musicals, all the different stuff that's going on in all the different venues that we have. It's pretty solid.
Been getting okay.
It's pretty solid. I'm not hip to the scene, for lack of a better word. But, I mean, with like Blue Man Group's coming through town. There's the Broadway at the Tennessee Theater series that's doing stuff.
We definitely get some big names, but I would almost argue that, I guess Asheville is the closest other market, but they get some bigger shows than we do.
And they have the venues for it. I think the the multi-use stadium project is going to help with that.
I mean, Asheville has the Orange Peel, and outside of that, they've got their what would be in our market the Civic Coliseum or Civic Auditorium.
Right.
They don't have a Tennessee Theater type thing of that size. Their Civic Auditorium that you and I went to go see a concert at wasn't that big.
No, it's
smaller
smaller than our Civic.
It was comfortable seats, but outside of that, it wasn't very large.
It's smaller than our Civic, so
yeah.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. I mean, but I don't know what the driver is. Like, what's the driver and why Asheville gets more shows than we do? More hippy dippy town.
I don't know. That's kind of weird because we outpace them in population
by a ton.
By a good bit. So I don't know if they just get more of the surrounding of Eastern North Carolina of people coming in to see music, or if it's just constantly more people coming into that town to see music.
I mean, maybe it's something with their promotion groups. The people that work those venues go out and get it, and have a history of going out and get it, and so promoters are more willing to work with them and bring acts in, because when the acts come, people come. And that hasn't been the same scene in here, but I think AC could fix that if he hasn't already. I mean, AC Entertainment handles the biggest.
He stepped away from it, though.
Yeah, but the group that still exists.
You're supposed to have an interview with him.
I know. He's too damn busy, and I couldn't put him down. I need to retouch base.
I thought he stepped away from it.
No, I mean, he was last time I talked to him, he was flying to LA to meet with some people.
Huh.
But anyway, moral is the group, with or without Ashley Caps, AC is still in continuous and regular contact with the biggest promoters and the biggest groups in the country.
Right.
I mean, Bonnaroo is arguably the biggest festival in the world, or at least in the United States. It's a back and forth with Coachella.
Right. I think so. Yeah.
So anyway, the moral of the story is we have access, and I don't know what the marketing is, and I don't know how the business side of that works for the promoter, and why they would or would not try to get acts into Nashville or into Knoxville. Because again, like if you're going to North Carolina and you're a big act, you're going to Raleigh. You're not going to Asheville. But like pre-pandemic, we had Foo Fighters coming here. They were supposed to be at Thompson,
right?
Which sucks, but
we definitely have some big acts. I mean, I think Paul McCartney's coming here,
right? You had the you had like Garth Brooks play like 7 nights in a row at Thompson.
Yeah. Added more nights out of the kindness of his heart. I mean, good on him. Yeah.
Comics do that shit too. But I mean, like Segura's coming here. If he hasn't already, Segura and Bert Kreischer are both playing. I think it's Tennessee Theater.
Probably.
Maybe the Civic Auditorium. I'm not sure which one.
That's where we saw Carlin back in the day.
I didn't see Carlin.
Yeah, we did.
I saw Robin Williams in the Civic with the Misses, but
I thought you were with me for Carlin.
I don't think I saw George Carlin live. I remember we used to get the tapes at the gas station and listen to him right around time. That was good times. Yeah. But I don't think I've seen George Carlin live. I mean, I hope not, or I'm going to feel like an idiot. So, because that's that'd be something to brag about.
I mean, I remember being there. I remember a mutual friend of ours being there. But I could have swore you would have been there with us, but maybe not. Would have been
at the Tennessee or Civic.
May have been at the Civic Auditorium, but it was in an auditorium setting. But I want to say it was a Tennessee.
Because I want to say if I thought about it hard, I think I saw Robin Williams in the Civic. Ice Bears games. Went to the circus in the Civic. And Allman Brothers in the auditorium with the missus.
Huh.
Thank you, wife. That was a good show, too. And then I saw Pumpkins in Tennessee Theater. Say what, baby? Prince. Yeah, Prince at Thompson, which was rough. Yeah. We saw Dave Matthews Band at Thompson.
Ben Folds.
Where did we see Ben Folds?
Valerium, but like wherever it is now. Whatever that place is, that's like under.
Oh yeah, right there, under the interstate downtown.
Whatever, I don't know.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Right there next to.
There's two venues right next to each other. It was like the International. And
yeah, that one.
Yeah. Dave, Ben Folds there. I've seen somebody else there.
We saw
and we saw Walk the.
In front of the
Yeah, Walk the Moon at Mill and Mine. That's the only thing I've seen at Mill and Mine. But that's like the entire. I think that's the entirety of my like major concert list. Plenty of Blue Cats, Pilot Lights, Macklemore at Thompson, where we got that sweet poster.
Oh gosh, I think covered up half of it at least.
Like me and her went and saw Jump Little Children in Asheville when they did a reunion tour. I saw Pumpkins in Asheville when they did their residency there. What did we say?
I saw Flyleaf
She saw. Where'd you see Flyleaf?
at Blue Cats. I saw what was it? Buck Cherry. I saw a lot of them.
New metal. The aughts new metal.
Years.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're like, yeah, I wasn't honestly counting Blue Cats or Pilot Light or, I mean,
Big enough names to consider them coming here.
that's fair. But like, I mean, Here Come the Mummies at New Amsterdam was pretty phenomenal.
Not as good as Robert Randolph there.
I don't know. I wasn't there for that. Were you there for the Robert Randolph?
What?
When Robert Randolph came on the Surprise Show?
She was.
I don't know.
She was the one that invited us.
No.
Because she was working there at the time.
Yeah.
And I was
There's
like,
a couple people that have done surprise
it
shows
was like
there.
some
It's
like,
kinda cool.
when it was like some kind of like semi-special concert.
Oh, that was the Jack Daniels show.
Yeah, the Jack Daniels one was something.
Robert Randolph?
Yeah.
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 It was a big and it was a surprise stop on a tour in between Nashville and Asheville, and nobody thought they were coming here.
Yeah.
And so people were literally crying and like puking and stuff.
That's cool shit.
Creepy.
Yeah.
It was good.
But
He's a good funky man.
I made a lot of money though.
there we go. So that's what you're there for.
That's right.
But anyway, I don't know. I agree with you. I think that I feel like the
That's one thing I've always
level of
wondered.
stuff
I'm
that
like,
comes through here doesn't.
I'm like, we're bigger. I'm like, we're one of the bigger cities in this area.
I mean,
like,
there's a vibe,
Why
though.
is there not?
For lack of a better way to say it, there's a vibe, whatever that means, to Asheville that we don't have. There is a feel to that, and I think we're getting there.
Maybe it was just like an iffy market.
Well, apparently North Carolina at large is not big on weed. It's just West North Carolina. But there is that
I'd say
part of the culture there for sure.
The coasters maybe too.
Well, I mean, and to be fair, like Asheville has become and was kind of early in the craft beer game. Like Highland's been around for a while. Like of the major craft brands, they're either Colorado or Asheville.
Yeah, I mean Sierra Nevada moved their brewery or
Moved a
open,
brewery.
moved,
Right.
yeah, moved
And
a brewery.
Oscar Blues has a brewery there, but they're out of Colorado, but they have a brewery there. Cigar City came up out of Florida. Highwire's out of there. Highland being the big old school one. Wicked Weed, which is another huge brand now because Eagle or Budweiser bought them, and that was a big
And Green Man's out of there.
yeah. And so they have that going for them too. So again, the moral of the story is I don't know. I agree. I don't know why Asheville gets all the love and we don't get as much here. But
I feel as though we don't get as much as like the kind of medium to high level bands. Like we either get like some of the big bands that we'll stop in.
right,
Got less oxygen in their blood.
it's true they are a little higher in the air than we are. That's a fair point. The Miss is coming in with gold tonight.
Tiny little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying.
We
It's
still
like,
get a decent, but it seems like, some of like the tours you look at, and it's like, okay, you're
There's a
stopping
gap.
all around us, but
Right.
you're not stopping here.
there's a gap in that, like, either you're a huge effing deal and
Right.
you're playing a 700 city tour, and we're one of the 700 cities because you're that big a band,
Right.
or
I don't know if that's the local, I guess, whoever picks bands coming in or the advertising. Not
Right.
the advertising.
like I
but
always made the argument though. It's like, well, it makes sense on
concert
tour.
promoter type people that bring those bands in. I don't know who decides when and if a band comes here.
I mean, it'd be the promoter and a venue availability. Because again, that was one of those things that I don't. Because somebody had mentioned it to me in like pandemic talk and like people trying to get married as the pandemic was easing and stuff like that, and the scheduling being crazy for venues.
Yeah.
Maybe the prices go crazy up.
Yeah, and
Mine was making so much money.
And so, Mill and Mine being a mixed-use venue or whatever that does weddings as well as like our school PTO big fundraisers at Mill and Mine.
Really? They
Yeah.
do weddings at the Mill and Mine?
Yeah,
I've only been there once. I mean, they've got that cool little courtyard. I'll give them that.
I mean, I think it'd be. I mean, I could see it being a cool place to get married. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how they do the seating or whatever, but
Yeah. Maybe right.
I'm just saying scheduling wise, you know, and especially when your two biggest venues in town are school venues. And one which is now apparently we're supposed to have like 3 concerts in Nayland, and they all got canceled or postponed because of the pandemic.
Really?
Yeah, it's a major. Like, I think Kenny Chesney was supposed to play or something like that, something big. But like, I mean, I think but again, like UT, as much as they make money, especially now that they have alcohol available at concerts and stuff, you know, men's and women's basketball get priority. So if it's in season for basketball, the biggest venue in town is schedule. I mean, the schedule's really shot. It's a harder schedule to fill, and we don't have another venue Thompson size for that size band or that size performance. You know, so I think that's part of the problem too. Is like, I think we need a new Civic for 1,000 reasons. And that being one of them. Like the idea that, you know, we could book one of those bands coming through on a Friday night at Thompson, but it's basketball season, so we can't.
Right. Yeah, because the Bijou's not that big.
Right. Tennessee's big, but it's not huge, but it's also...
It's pretty big, though, I would think.
It is pretty big, but the Tennessee's got, like, it's a little bit fancy, for lack of a better word. Like, seeing the Pumpkins in there felt weird.
Really?
Yeah. Like, we were front row. I think we were first or second row. It was a seated pit, which was awesome. But, you know, like,
yeah, I got to be
Billy Corgan spitting on me. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I got to be front row center at a concert at the Tennessee.
But I'm saying, like, it's just like you're looking up at this gorgeous, whatever gothic art ceiling thing going on, and a grunge band is playing.
Right.
Like, I kind of felt weird. I'm not mad at it. I had a great time.
Rock band. Or grunge.
I mean, I guess not, because they're not from Seattle, which is always funny. I remember listening to an interview with Billy Corgan, and he was talking about how annoying it was that everywhere they go, people ask him what part of Seattle they're from. And it's like, Chicago.
Nah.
Chicago. Like, it's just assumed because you came out in that era that you were from Seattle.
Like, oh, you're a big rock band from the early 90s?
Yeah.
You're from Seattle, right?
Where are you from, Seattle?
That's the only place that brought out that kind of music.
I mean, Soundgarden, Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Alice in Chains.
Yeah, that's where that was.
You
I
know,
was trying to think
of the top of the cream of the crop of that era. They were all out of Seattle except for Pumpkins. I put Pumpkins in there. I'm a big Pumpkins junkie, but anyway, stadium stuff in Nashville, $2 billion.
Yeah,
that apparently the team doesn't necessarily want.
That again, the state is floating. I can't remember how much.
Yeah,
half of
but
it.
I mean, again, and the interesting one on that one is the ownership conversation, because the team is putting up as much as they are. Who owns the stadium? Is there a rent issue? Like, how is that all going to work out? Because they're paying a good chunk of it, even though it's less than half, but it's between a third and half of what they're paying up front. And so that's going to be an interesting play out. But I mean, again, I think it's one of those, I think the market's there. There's enough going on. Nashville's growing fast enough and hard enough, and there's enough, I mean, you know, there's enough things in Nashville, not to mention its home of country persona, that it's laying on extra hard now. Like, it's always been kind of that way.
All right, but how many?
But it's becoming like an industry in and of itself, that this is the home of country.
Right.
And this is where you come, and so there'll be big country things going on all the time. But you got, I mean...
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could maybe do the CMT Awards there, which I guess are...
Oh, in the venue? I mean, you can do concerts in there. You can do, again, basketball, football. I would assume the Music City Bowl will move in there, because it's played at the Titan Stadium currently. You know, you could get some other... I mean, there's tons of stuff that they'll do with those things. So, some drone racing league. If you watch that, it's pretty crazy.
I think I've seen a couple, like, little races of it.
But, okay, so...
I mean, yeah, I can see there being possibility for it.
I mean,
I just worry more about the sustainability of that continued use.
Right, and I think
profitable.
I think the conversation of, is this a government thing? Is this something that government should be paying for? Is this something that the taxpayers in general should be pitching in to be a part of? That kind of thing. Is this a collective good?
Yeah. And
should we spend our collective treasure on it?
Right.
And I think that's...
If we're constantly like, hey, we don't have enough money for teachers and enough money for police, but hey, we're going to build you guys a new football stadium.
I think that's
all right. I'm good. I
think that's 100% a valid conversation to have.
Yeah. But I mean, it's a conversation you can have about many things. I mean, there's always that debate about the greater good as far as money. Like, would this make a greater good going into A, B, or C?
Right. Okay, so I went in on Tuesday, and I picked up a Republican ballot. And if you follow us on Facebook, you saw a wonderful picture of me with my I voted sticker, making fun of the fact that they didn't even ask me if I was actually a Republican. They just gave me a Republican ballot because I told them to.
Did you expect them to?
No, I didn't expect them to do shit. They don't ask anyway. You fill it on a little piece of paper.
Right.
Did you vote?
No.
I mean, you told me you weren't gonna.
I was in the middle of moving, and I'm against like the whole primary, I guess, part of it.
I think it's. I think your situation,
partisan primary.
Your situation does bring up an interesting question.
We talked about it before that I wish there was a way to vote on both sides of it, but there's not really a logical way to really do that.
Right. So Matt brought up something very interesting in North Carolina, where he's from. When you register to vote, you can choose a party to affiliate with. So you register, you tell them you're a Republican, you get your voter ID card or whatever. It says Republican on it. If you register as an independent, it goes like Tennessee does, where you walk in and tell them which one you want on a primary day.
Okay.
So if you're registered as a Republican, you get a Republican primary. If you're registered as a Democrat, you get a Democratic primary. If you're registered as an independent, you could pick it on the day of. I thought that was okay.
Okay.
Still sucks, but it's better. It's a better version of sucking than current.
Better than just A or B.
Right. And especially the loose part of
for the moderate, I guess, voters, right? Essentially,
because it gives the middle independent-ish voters some play, especially in a race like we had. But at the same time, it handicaps you for saying you're a Democrat.
All right.
If it was local, if they did that version here in Tennessee, you would have then been handicapped and not been able to cross over, as a lot of people presumably did in this last election.
Right.
And so that was a neat little interesting ism. But so I don't know. I ran through and looked at it. I'm a little. I don't know if I'm surprised. I don't really have any insider knowledge or anything. I mean, a little bit. So in all the judges' set of stuff, the Chancellor Part 2, which is Dino Cole, Bud Armstrong, and Clarence Pridemore Jr. Clarence Pridemore Jr. was the incumbent, and he got beat walking away. It was bad for him. But I was a little surprised Dino didn't win, because if I remember correctly, looking at the lawyers thingy, the Bar Association's survey, he had Dino had all the good marks. Like if the Bar Association's list was 1, 2, 3, it was Dino, Bud, Pridemore.
Yeah.
By a good percentage. The lawyers in town like Dino. But Bud pulled that one out pretty substantially. I mean, pretty substantially, with a whopping 5,400 votes.
Yeah. He was the incumbent?
No, Pridemore was the incumbent.
Pridemore, okay.
And, I'm sorry, Bud had 14,000 votes to 7,800 to 5,300 as you went down the group.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Dino's the only one I talked to, but...
Didn't Buck get outbid? Or am I thinking of a different race?
That's Richard Bud Armstrong was that race.
Oh, okay.
More judges, mostly running against. Hey, our good friend Eric Lutton dominated with 21,125, 100% of the vote.
Go Eric.
What a badass!
Thank you, Eric.
Glenn Jacobs got 24,000. Like, I didn't. Okay, so there's an admission. I didn't vote on any of the unopposed races. Like, so I didn't vote for Mayor Jacobs because I had a Republican primary. I just skipped that one.
How dare you?
That was my vote. My vote was to not vote in that race because there was no decision.
You don't support our Wrestler King?
I don't. Not against nobody. No. I picked nothing.
Yeah.
Nick and Gina in District 3. Gina won that one by a lot, but Jesus Christ, look at that. District 3 total votes, 2,400 votes.
Yeah.
So Gina Oster was 1,750. Nick Ciparo was 669. So it did break a cycle for somebody. What do you say?
Are there any other District 3 numbers as far as total? I wonder if there were people kind of like you that left certain of them blank.
Oh, we could check. Well, we could check. There was no Democrat primary. There is Stuart Hole running.
But as far as like District 3 for a different position?
No, that's the only one. And District 3. District 7, Rhonda Lee took that one pretty solidly, 54%. Larson held on to 10, and he'll go up against Dylan Early. That'll be an interesting race. Because I think that Larson J race was probably the biggest recipient of crossover votes. I think Larson J was probably the biggest recipient because I think Steve Weiner is one of the list of people that left-leaning Knox County residents don't like. And that's one of the races. I think, maybe let me reword that. I think the 10 and 11 commission races were probably top of most people's list for worth crossing over for. And I think that of the two, Larson and Steve, anybody that crossed over was going to take Larson. And then I think that's the same in 11. Anybody that crossed over was going to take Kim, who ended up winning there as well. So I think, and I have zero evidence for this because I don't know how to look up the data, but as the data comes out and as Matt and Daniel and those guys start looking into it, I'll bet you that crossover voting won this for Larson and won this for Kim Frazier because neither one of them blew it away.
I was about to say
15,000 to 11,000, both races more or less.
Yeah.
And we'll see what that means. We'll see what that looks like when they get up against the actual left opponent. I think I like Vivian. Vivian Shipe was a really cool lady. I don't think she has a chance in hell of winning 11 against either. But she's got to run against Kim Frazier. But I don't think Vivian has a chance in hell against Kim. I don't think Dylan really has a chance against Larson either. I think Dylan's a cool dude. I just think he's a little too green. I think he exudes that green. Like I like younger people getting into politics, but he's a little too young. He's like 26, or maybe even lower than that. It might have been 24. And also just recently moved to Knoxville out of town or got a deal. Biggs and Jacobs in the trustee race. Biggs, again, didn't blow that one out, which I took that one for granted. I think I voted for Jacobs just because I didn't care. Because I still don't know what the job is. Then Judd Davis, Sharon Frankenberg. I took Judd because I'd heard good things about him. I hadn't really heard anything about Sharon. I don't really have a good excuse for that one. Maybe I'm sexist. Moving on down, the big sheriff race. And that surprised me. I voted for Tom Spangler. My prediction was that Jimmy was going to win. Because I think both of them are very similar candidates, practically speaking.
All right.
But with all the controversy.
But some people might want to go back to...
Right. Which Jimmy had his share of controversy when he was sheriff too. It's just, it was 4 years ago and I forgot about it. Where, I mean, literally Thursday before Election Day was one of the Sheriff's Department Merit Council things that's been going on for years finally settled. And then Wednesday morning she quit. I'll tell you that story in a second. But anyway, like that kind of stuff. Like, which again throws in another weird one. Gina Oster on the Sheriff's Merit Council now has to vacate that. Well, not yet because she has to beat Stuart Hole for the general. But she gets on the Merit Council. She vacates the Merit Council to run for State 18 against Eddie Manis. Loses that race, gets back into the Merit Council. During the questions to get back into Merit Council, she was asked if she was going to run again. She said, I don't know, maybe. And then now she's running for 3. She's going to end up having to vacate the Merit Council again. But it's a 3-member body. And
shit.
Yeah, it's only a 3-member body, and she's one of them. And she was...
Stepped out, come back in. Stepped out, come back in?
Yeah, I guess. I don't know exactly how it flies. But she was she's not a fan of Spangler.
Yeah.
Period. And she's not a fan of this whole thing. And like, did we talk about it last week? Because I learned all this a couple weeks ago on the Compass Show. The Martha Dooley situation. Okay. So the Merit System Council, the whole point of it is so that Jimmy Sheriff, he steps out because he's term limited by the rules. He can only do 2 consecutive terms. Spangler takes his place. And so the Merit Council is supposed to exist to protect Sheriff's Department employees from the politics of the changing of a sheriff.
Okay.
So the idea is Spangler comes in, and these people that support Jimmy, he's got to get him out of the way because it's his office now, and politics, blah, 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 blah. And so Martha Dooley, is it Martha? I think it's Martha Dooley. Anyway, She was Sheriff JJ's communications director. And as an agreement in her hiring, she used to work for one of the news stations around here or something like that. So she's got news media background. And when Jimmy brought her into the sheriff's department, he could only afford, with the budget or something like that, a pretty mediocre salary compared to what she was making before. And so as a bonus to try to talk her into it, he gave her a car. He said, hey, you can have a Knox County Sheriff's Office car and gas card as part of your salary package.
I think I heard a little bit about that.
Right.
Yeah.
And so when Spangler took over, he didn't keep her as his communications director. He brought in his campaign manager, and I forgot her name, to be his communications officer. And when he moved Martha into a different clerical role, he took her car away.
Yeah.
Because, again, this was years ago when Dooley came over. It actually might have been before JJ. Years ago when they came over, and so her pay rate has come up significantly, but she kept the car the whole time. And so the argument at play was that the car and the gas card was part of my compensation package, and Spangler took that away for political reasons. And Spangler's argument was like, your job doesn't necessitate a car, you shouldn't have one.
Yeah.
I don't care about compensation conversation. Your job, what you do, when you were communications director, it made sense. Because you're supposed to drive downtown to go do a press conference. You're supposed to drive to the news station to do an interview. You're supposed to do this. Like, that's part of the job. But it's when he moved her out of that job because he replaced her with his communications director,
Right.
he took the car back. And so that was what this whole fight was. And so, like, Wednesday or Thursday of a week and a half ago, before the election, they finally came down with this decision. The mayor council says it is clear that car and gas card was part of her compensation package, and that you took that away egregiously or whatever. And so they made Spangler give her car back. Spangler gets elected to keep the seat. She quits. So it's 2 years of this back and forth debacle. And she was just trying to, like, at some point it got to where she was holding on to this because she thought Jimmy was going to come in and win the seat. I can't, I don't know how else to explain that she quits the day after the election when Spangler wins again. She doesn't want to work for Spangler. She was holding out for him to get him replaced. Maybe it's not JJ per se, but it's not Spangler. And since Spangler gets to keep the job, she was like, fuck it, I'm out. And I can't help but think, as much as the Sheriff's Merit Council is supposed to be protection from politics, that it was exactly politics at play and why everything shook out when it did, how it did, all this different stuff. And no pass to Spangler here, because it's bullshit that he's got outside attorneys costing extra money. But it's within his budget. So I don't know. It's not like he's asking for outside money or extra money from the county to pay for these sheriff's offices. He's doing it in lieu of some other thing, or it's excess in his budget. So there's a couple of things. But because, again, it goes back to the law director's office. Doesn't make sense to me. Like, it doesn't make sense to me that the sheriff, the county commission, the mayor's office.
Was it the law director they got voted on this time?
No, it was not about this time.
Okay, never mind. Sorry.
It doesn't make sense to me. Bud Armstrong used to be, and that might be why you're confusing it. He was the prior law director. But it doesn't make sense to me that Knox County Schools, Sheriff's Office, County Commission, Mayor's Office, County Parks Department, County Roads, all those are supposed to be represented by the same group of attorneys all the time for everything. It just doesn't make sense.
They have separate
maybe they do assign them separate attorneys.
That the sheriff's department has separate attorneys, essentially.
But they're supposed to be from the law director's office. They shouldn't be hiring their own attorneys separately. It's the law director's office should assign them somebody of the county attorneys.
The internal department, yeah.
Right. And so, like, I don't know, like, what happens, let's say, I don't know, I wouldn't even know how to kind of pose the hypothetical, but let's say Knox County was a little bit less red, a little bit more of a purple county. What happens when we have a Democrat law director with a Republican sheriff and a Democrat mayor and a Republican majority commission? How are we going to, how could it even be pretend that it's going to be likely that law director's office is going to be able to properly serve all these different offices fairly, correctly? best advocating for their whatever. Again, that runs on the assumption that the partisanship matters and blah, 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 which it fucking does, but...
Well, that's kind of the weird thing about the judicial side of it, is that you're essentially arguing what is precedent, essentially. Like, what is the stated law as it stands? And yes, you can argue, I guess, like the kind of minutia of it.
But it's also, like, if we did this, or if we wrote this new ordinance this way, what does that actually mean? And really what it means, and this is the reality for anybody.
That's where you're changing things, but I mean, when you're arguing what is...
No, but not really, because when you ask anybody, like, the one thing that I've learned over dealing with lawyers over time is that when you're asking a lawyer about whether something is illegal or not, unless it's something real basic like murder, their answer is not whether it is or isn't legal. Their answer is whether they think they could defend you and keep you out of jail.
Right.
Because there's gray area, because there's all this stuff at play. And so even when it's something like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of something off the top of my head, something where the sheriff's office came into a school and beat up on a kid. And the school board's pissed off about it because the sheriff shouldn't have been in there in the first place. And so we now have the law director's office having a legal fight with the sheriff's office over the actions of a sheriff's deputy on school property. And it's the same group of lawyers that are supposed to be working both sides of this case. That's my point. And then twist that up a little further when those bodies are more, like right now, for the most part, at least they're theoretically, philosophically aligned as Republicans. When you twist that up and you have Democrats and Republicans and they're a lot more even, and the school board's more Democratic and the sheriff's office is a Republican, but the law director's office is a Democratic-leaning law director's office or a Democrat elected to be law director. And so you have the Democratic law director with the Democratic school board against the Republican sheriff's office. But the law director is supposed to represent both. How does that come out logically that the law director's office is going to take care of both jobs correctly? That's what I'm trying to get at.
Right. And again, I don't know, from my uninformed viewpoint of it, a lot of what law has come down to, I think in more modern times, is as far as precedent, because that's what you have to argue. Because you have case law that has gone through, whether it be local from state Supreme Court, even up to federal Supreme Court, is that you have precedents of at least very similar cases that have been decided by others that have been, agreed upon because they've gone through the appellate courts where they've gone through an appeals and been either reaffirmed or overturned. To where that's a lot of what the lawyers will come to the court with. It's like, hey, we've had a very similar case, and it's already been decided at either a level above us or two levels above us or very similar level cases, is that this is established case law. This has precedent. This is something that has happened prior.
Right. When
that has already been decided, so there's not much to argue.
Well, that's when you're not arguing facts anymore. When you're arguing validity of the case.
That's when you argue facts.
No, but when you're getting into arguing facts,
that's when you argue the facts are different.
Did this event happen or not? Did these parts of this event happen or not? So again, I'm just throwing it out there just because it's fresh. We got this kid at the school that got his head bounced off a desk. Is this fact or not? We talked about this last week, didn't we? The kid, they thought they had weed in his backpack. Cop cuffs him, doesn't even take the backpack off him. Cuffs him, puts him in a chair, slams his head into a desk.
Apparently, I don't remember part of last time. I don't know.
Oh, it's a crazy story. Yeah. And kudos, kid's 100% badass, 100% badass. Because after all this goes down, face bleeding, walking him out to the cruiser, he still has his backpack on, which is the whole focus of this conversation. And the cop says, "Are you gonna be cool and take that backpack off?" He says, "No, you can fucking cut it off." Maybe that's paraphrase. I don't know if he said fucking cut it off or whatever. Yeah. 8th grader, by the way. He says, "You can cut it off." So he cuts off his backpack, rips into it, and he's got some cigarillos in there. Teacher or principal thought he had some weed in there. Said, "You smell like it." So bounces his head up a fucking desk. Goes to the hospital, not the police department. But that family's suing Knox County Schools right now. Which is why I keep kind of half referencing it. Anyway, moral of the story is, on a perfectly philosophical basis, yes, you're right. You're 100% right. There's case law. They're bringing in precedents. They're doing all that kind of stuff. But that's not how it actually works.
No, that is a majority of the way of how case law works.
But the DA's office or the law director's office or the public defender's office, they don't have as much choice as others. They choose which cases they want to take, whether they can win the cases or not. It's not about what really actually happened. It's about, is there evidence enough for us to win this conviction? Is there evidence enough, or is there enough precedents in place that we can,
to a degree,
that we can actually take this to a court and they're going to agree with us or not?
I agree. I mean, to an extent, they're looking at how much money could this cost us. They look at their...
And so a law director's office that may or may not be politically aligned with some of its clients, theoretically, in the conversation that we're having, might make the decision to not pursue a case on behalf of the sheriff's office because they don't think they can win, or they don't have the drive to push that case as far as it's going to need to win that case for the sheriff's office, because we're not politically friendly. They won't say that part out loud, but it's a very possible option.
It's possible. Yeah, it could be a monetary thing as well, but I agree. Yeah.
Again, and I like Miss Gina. I like Miss Gina a lot, but if you were to ask me point blank if I think that part of Gina's decision-making about Spangler was more politics than it was facts, I would agree that was probably true. I think that there is maybe not a cabal for lack of a better word, but as far as some of the little in-groups that go on that I see when I talk to different people and see different Facebook things and stuff going on, I think Gina and JJ are kind of buddy-buddy. And she doesn't particularly like Spangler. And so she's using her seat on Merit Council, not egregiously per se. I think the facts kind of line up with her decision, but I think she was more than happy to try to put some damage on Spangler to try to help Jimmy win the seat back. Yeah, I don't know that for a fact. This is all hypothetical on my end.
Speculation.
But again, I love Gina. Gina's probably one of my favorite people just because she was the first. She was naive enough to let us practice on her. She took our virginity.
Thank you, Gina. For giving us a chance.
I don't want to do it. I don't want to. I want to touch it for a second, but I really don't want to do it. This Roe v. Wade situation is fucking crazy.
Yeah.
Because honestly, there's part of me that in some of the leaked, whatever it's called, that everybody's arguing about,
right?
There's some of it that I actually agree with Scalia, right? Pretty sure it was Scalia. Anthony
is dead.
What's the other S one? Is Scalia dead? Fucking really?
Yeah.
Is that who Kavanaugh replaced?
I believe so.
I don't fucking know anymore. Whatever.
Alito. Samuel Alito.
Yeah, Alito. There you go. See, there's an S in there somewhere. I do agree with the premise that something this significant needs to be written law, not decision of the court. If this needs to be a federal issue, we need to, whether it's an amendment to the Constitution or whatever it needs to be technically, this should be written law in the United States, not an interpretation of existing law. This issue is too broad. This issue is too significant and specific to be gray areaed into an old case to me. And so that part I agree with a little bit. Now, I'm a dude. My opinion on abortion is really not important. My general stance on it is it's not really my business. But what I know isn't my business is telling you what to do with your body. So if that counts as pro-choice, then I guess I'm pro-choice. But I just think the law part of it is what bothers me. I think that is true. I think that something this specifically significant should be worked on by the elected representatives of the people and be written into law in and of itself. It shouldn't be whatever the argument was that got it in the first place on this, precedence nonsense of the courts.
Right.
And so
I don't know if it's, it's been talked about that a lot of, even in the confirmation hearings of the most recent justices that have come in, they've been asked about this.
But they can't answer that ethically.
Right. But as far as their vague answers, they admitted that the Roe v. Wade and Casey law are essentially what they call precedents. They are established law.
But they're not, obviously. That's the point. It's not law. It's the decision of the court based on other law that's not specific to the topic. Again, law of the land being that this is how it's worked and this is how it's always worked. Why would we change it? I get that. But if it was law, they couldn't do this decision that they might do. That's another part of it, too. Everybody's blowing the shit like it's already happened. I don't know that they'll back off. It's very possible that they don't back off and it stays the way it is. But it's not official. This was a draft.
I think it was like kind of preeminent of, I think it was the Mississippi law that was going to the Supreme Court. So I'm assuming this is something that the justices have been thinking about, knowing that it was an upcoming thing, and maybe trying to start out a draft. I think was what initially had come out or whatever got reported.
Right, but apparently, this was written back in February. Like the actual date on the draft that was leaked is February.
Well, I think the Mississippi law got kicked up months ago. So I mean that would kind of coincide with it.
Right, but again, for conversation's sake, and again maybe tinfoil hat time, whatever you want to call it. For conversation's sake, this could have been what Alito, when the very first rumblings of this Mississippi law coming to the Supreme Court started coming. And he could be like, here's my thoughts on it. Because, presumably he's obviously not a big fan of abortion and was looking for the opportunity to get rid of it or whatever. But he could have written this thing up.
It's like a 98-page opinion, I think.
Was it that big? I didn't think it was that big.
I thought it was.
But he could have started writing it up with a plan.
Right.
Thinking it was a thing and just shoved it in his desk.
It's very possible, yeah.
And there's
like
questions.
That's where I know this is coming up. Let me go ahead and have my opinion out.
Right.
And in writing, I can always revise it.
Right. There's been a bunch of reference and inference that it's a 5-4, that this would be the majority opinion if it were to come out.
Right.
But again, this could have just been like, I don't know, working on some stuff. Might be a thing, might not be a thing.
Right.
Shoved in his desk. Apparently this whole leak part of it's very rare.
Right.
Which again, to me, my initial reaction.
I think I read there was a leak when the Roe v. Wade was going out. There was also a leak that came out back in the late 60s.
Yeah, and apparently they were saying where I'd heard it on the Crystal Saga podcast, that the person who leaked it was like to the New York Times or something like that with a there's some journalistic
most recent
phrase.
Was Politico.
Right, no, but the original the old Roe, the original one was that they had a time on it. It's like you can release it, like here's the story, here's the scoop, write the story, but you can't release it until whenever. And then like weather or something happened and the actual official hearing or whatever to put out the decision of the court was delayed a day or two. And so the leak came out. So it wasn't really a leak, was the story that I got, is that it was given to to a particular person in the press to break the story, but it was supposed to break at the same time as they were going to release the decision.
Right.
But the release of the decision got pushed back for some whatever reason, and so it kind of just the timing.
The leak, the leak made it out before the official decision.
Right. But to me, again, to me, the big thing about this initial reaction is this. And you can attest to this because I sent it in the text. I sent the link to the story, and it's like the Republicans are trying to lose. Like all accounts of people that I understand that know what they're talking about, that the Republicans are poised to take a bunch of seats in both houses in November. They're gonna. That's just the reality from any of the political pundits that I've listened to, at least.
Yeah.
That, with all the trouble going on in the nation, with the Ukraine mess, with Biden and post-pandemic stuff and all the different crap going on, that it is very likely that the Republicans are going to take huge strides, except for the White House, obviously, because that's not on the ballot.
What are you talking about?
The ballot is not.
No, Trump's coming back into office.
He might get, reinstated because the fraud might be found.
People are gonna find those missing votes.
Right. But point being, it's like of a list of things that you could think of bombs that you could throw into a campaign cycle that would damage a party more than anything, this is probably one of the highest ones on the list.
But at the same time, I think it could go either way. I think it's going to rally both sides of it.
I agree, but I don't. But while I agree with the premise of your statement, I think the reality is, and polling backs it up, like 70+% of Americans do not agree with zero abortion, period.
I think it's like 64, I think. But yeah.
I thought it was like 28-72. Like there's 28% of Americans that says no abortion, no reason, never. There's like 72% that say, I can think of a couple of reasons why we should keep this around. And then when you get into that 72, it gets real broad on whether it's like 24 hours, 72 hours, 20 weeks, whatever. Like all the specifics once you get inside that. But 100% yes, 100% no. It's like 70% plus Americans say we should have abortion as an option. 68, 64, whatever. It's a significant majority.
Right. Not by much, but yeah. Okay, yeah.
And so if that's true, sure, the hard left and the hard right will both activate, and the hard right's going to be super excited that they got this thing done, and they're like, they did it, we got to support them, get out there and vote. The hard left's going to be like, they did it, fuck them, get out there and vote. But then the broad middle, which is presumably 60+%, leaning towards there should be some options. At least those 64% that live in states like Tennessee who have an automatic clause on abortion kill laws. There's like 28 states that have, I can't remember, there's some term for it. That's like 28.
It's like 13.
Okay. Oh, whatever, 13. If you're in one of those 13 states...
Trigger laws, they call them.
Yeah. If you're in one of those 13 states...
And once Roe v. Wade is either overturned
don't even have to call a special session.
Disputed, yeah. I think at least in Tennessee, it's within 30 days of that whatever trigger.
Right.
That then the state law goes into effect.
Right. Anyway, moral of the story is of those 70% of people that live in Tennessee that think there should be some option for abortion sometimes, how do they vote come November?
Right.
Because, okay, fine. The overwhelming majority, I don't know what, you'd have to figure out the math, but there's a majority of Republicans in the state of Tennessee, but there's a good chunk of Republicans that still think abortion should be an option. So what do? And then all your middle ground voters, the Democrats obviously are going to do what they do. But of the center and center right, and then the far right sections, okay, so fine, the far right's going to stay there. But that's that 20%-ish that no abortion, never. But what does that other group do? How do they vote come November? That's the point I'm getting to. Because now, and again, now it's a campaign issue where...
Well, I mean, with it being a trigger law, I mean, you're essentially, for those center right, newly installed legislators that you would have bring in, you would essentially trying to overturn...
Right. It would be July of next year before they could do anything about it.
Already established law.
Right. Sure. But
which I think it's harder to change a law versus...
I mean, I don't know.
To create a new law.
I mean... presumably because a bunch of people that put that new law in place are still there to try to keep it there. It's probably part of the reason why it's harder to change it.
I mean, I've read about like some states they've had trigger laws going back decades.
Yeah.
To where I'm not. I think our trigger law was like maybe 2017 or something.
Yeah, it's not that
it
old.
was originally drafted.
But I don't know. Like I said, I think it's. I don't know. I think it should be law. And my smaller government argued, yeah, sure, I think the state should have more choice in it than that. And really, if you want to break down to it, I think the county should be able to make it. Knox County can be an abortion zone. Roane County decides not to allow abortions in Roane County. Okay. I don't. In my ideal version of government, then fine. Like I'm okay with this Roe v. Wade thing happening in the sense that I think Knox County would keep it, or at least the city of Knoxville would keep it as an option. Mm-hmm. So that means it's an option. And
that's where I've talked, like, even last time we had lawyer Jamie on. That's where I get kind of confused on when exactly that supremacy clause supersedes one versus the other.
Well, it's only federal kicks in if it is specifically federal. So, like, again, this one specifically, there is no law on the federal books on abortion. And so the states can do it how they want to. And so since there's no law in place federally, if Texas, for example, goes to, you have 6 minutes, after 6 minutes of abstention, it's now a murder charge. The federal government can't say anything because they don't have a law that says you can't do that. Right. Or that the states can't do that. I did see a headline, and I don't know if it's true or a fake one, that said Texas considers the death penalty for abortion. So get an abortion and we'll kill you because we care about life. Like, it was like, I don't know. Again, I don't know if it was a true headline or not. It was funny, whether it was true or not.
Right.
But okay, we got to go way back because there was one thing that I thought of that was interesting about your voting status.
Yeah.
Since you were registered at your old place, but you have since moved.
Yeah.
Would you be technically fraudulently voting if you voted in your old precinct? I mean, you literally
assuming
moved.
it would depend on when I voted.
Well,
if I voted when I was a resident of that place, completely legal.
Right. If you early voted.
If I'm no longer, yeah.
If you early voted, you would have been legally voting. But if you tried to vote on election day, you'd actually already moved by then.
Yeah. Would probably be against law because I'm no longer a constituent of that district if I'm no longer living there.
Right, but should you be able to vote in the new district that you're going into, only be living there for 3 days?
Yes.
I'm just saying. I'm curious what the actual answer is to that. Because
Yes.
I bet you there's a date, and I bet you it's not the election day. I'll bet you it's like it was like back in February, like somewhere in February, like February 20 something. That your address on February 20 something, or maybe that's the day that registration cuts off. Because they have a gap where, like, registration, you can't register to vote after a certain period.
You can register day of.
Can we in Tennessee?
Yeah.
No. I'll bet you there's a date somewhere in there, though. Maybe it's petition turn in or something like that. I'll bet you still could have voted day of in your old precinct and it was legal. I'll bet.
I don't think so.
All right. I'll email Chris Davis and ask him about it. He'll know the answer. I mean, you didn't vote,
I'm
so
sure.
You don't have to worry about it. You didn't break any laws.
Oh, I'm not worried at all.
I'm just saying I'm curious about it.
No, I mean, it makes logical sense to me that the day that you go in and vote, if you are voting as a constituent of a place you do not live, you are not a registered voter of that district.
No, I mean, I follow your logic on it. I agree with you in the logic sense of it, but
Right, and I'm pretty sure that's exactly the way the Election Commission would rule it.
Okay.
If you are not living as a constituent in that district.
I already owe you $5. You want to double or nothing?
Huh?
I was like, I'm pretty sure. Did I ever pay you that $5 I owed you?
No, that I didn't give a shit about.
Okay. Well, I was going to say, can we go double or nothing on that? There is a date prior to election day that was actually the date when your address matters. I don't know this. You could be 100% right. I don't know this for a fact.
We would have to, as AC would say, we would have to iron out the specifics of it. But sure, why not?
Okay, so double or nothing. This is the bet, right? So for $5 for me, which would bring it to a total of 10 that I owe you.
All right.
For the $5 additional to me is that
$5 additional to me.
From me, excuse me.
Oh,
you're right.
from you.
You're right. You're right. You got to be specific here. So for the double or nothing bet to fly,
I don't remember what the original $5 was about. That I
don't know either. Is that
I remember it was some sports thing. Is
that if you have moved in a very short window prior to election day, you can still vote in your old precinct. I think the date is prior to election day. I guess that's my vote. Is that
I think it really comes down to when you place your vote. But
okay, I'm trying to make sure we word the specifics correctly here, so we don't argue it after the fact. So, can you vote for a precinct that you no longer live in or not? And what's the window of time to be there?
Yeah.
So literally, because technically speaking, early voting you're not voting until election day anyway. Technically, your ballot doesn't count until election day. Your ballot is in an ether until election day. So
right, but they've had the cases of if you died pre-election, but you put in an early voting, your vote still counts because you were alive as a constituent with a valid vote that was then placed, postmarked, and everything.
Right. I'll call Chris and we'll figure it out. Anyway, So yeah, I'll call Chris. I'll figure it out. Double or nothing. I'll owe you $10. You're probably right. I don't doubt that you're right. So anyway, Spengler won that race. We went way off on the deep end. Steve Triplett, despite his Ohio issues, won the District 7 school board race.
It's kind of crazy. Like, I wonder how much of that story, like, it seemed to be a semi-big story, but
Compass broke the story.
Oh, really?
And they broke it
late,
which they don't normally do. They talked about that on their shows. Like they prefer not to, but this one seemed important enough. That kind of deal. Christie beat the crap out of Phil King, but that's still
a pretty wide margin.
Bunch of circuit court, criminal court.
Is that all 0%?
Yeah, nobody's running. Oh, these are Democratic primaries. Yeah, there's no Democrat ran. So we switch over here. District 9, Republican, Christie beat King. And then we switch over to the Democratic primary. No eligibles. I mean, we got to go all the way down to mayor, which Debbie Hensley wore out. Of 8,000 total votes, she took 6,000 of them. And then
Tyler Gibbons sound familiar? Is he?
He was on the show. He's the only mayor candidate I've found the show so far.
Okay.
Sarah Keith had on the show. She got 100% of that voting populace.
Does that say Dave Cat Crawlett?
Kaz Cazalet.
Kaz. Okay.
Yeah. He's running for trustee against Biggs now.
I'm trying to remember.
Then Butler won I think it's, John Butler won. God, that's sad. District 1, Democratic primary, school board. John Butler, Charles Frazier. Combined total of 1,141 votes. Butler won with 651 votes.
I'm trying to remember where it was. It was kind of one of those like odd news stories, articles that I was reading. It was not inside Tennessee, but it was like their nickname was Patriot. Something weird like that.
Nice.
And like the election commission had to come down and say like, no, you cannot be, Bob Patriot Smith. They try to like put that in as like kind of like as part of their name.
I wonder if they'll let me put Lord on it when I run.
They're like, no, you can't do that.
I wonder if I can run for, when I run for something, I can be Lord Seth.
I mean,
my credit card wouldn't let me do it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Try to get I got a new credit card for the production company, and I wanted to do it as Lord Seth at Barbarian Productions.
They didn't acknowledge it as a.
And it's like he's got to have
accredited.
You got to have a real first name. No, I'm sorry. It was Facebook that was doing that. That's what it was. I was trying to start a new Facebook account.
You can send them a picture of your certificate.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, and like the AI caught it. It was like you're using a prefix, a non-valid prefix. And so then I tried to do it just as my first name, Lord. Nope.
Did listen to a little bit of an interesting podcast that was talking about that as far as the odd names, some of the odd names that people have, that even some people have the last name Null, Null. And then how most...
computers get real confused on that.
Yeah, exactly. That's how it was. And there's people that have talked about, trying to sign up for credit cards or whatever, that when you type in Null, that comes up as like... essentially, a zero as a null, a no...
Right, a no value.
Yeah, no value.
It's an empty square for all the computer cares. Yeah, that could be a problem.
But it also like pushed back on some like the popular misconceptions. Like there's nobody that has like a single letter last name, and it's like, well, yeah, there's lots of people that have a single letter last name, or a double hyphenated last name or whatever.
Yeah,
or 2 or 3 middle names.
Yeah, I was scrolling through Facebook, and it was a Family Feuds clip, and the dude's name was Obu.
Yeah.
It's like, what's your name? Obu. What's your last name? Obu. What's your middle name?
Yeah.
Obu. And then, Steve, what's his name? Steve Harvey. He's like, what? Like, he was on the floor laughing. It's funny.
Yeah. And that was the other interesting about it, because they actually called some of these people, and they're like, what's your last name? I'm like, what's it spelled? Like, oh, my name is, Cherry Knoll, like Null. They're like, yeah. When I tried to sign up for a Google account, and every time I tried to type in my last name as my name, like it just kept telling me like, please try again. It's like, that's my motherfucking last name. I can't type in anything else. Like, this is my last name. It's like, we don't recognize this as a last name.
Yeah, that's rough. Oh. Like, I have a hard time because there's not a ton of Seths. I mean, I've met a few over time.
What?
There's not a ton of Seths. I don't have a hard time with computer shit. I just have a hard time because, like, I'm not used to hearing my name unless it's referring to me.
Yeah.
Like, my name's not super rare, but, like, there's a kid. There's a
okay.
kid.
Let's see. I thought it was rare, and I'm like, it's not a rare name.
It's not super rare, but it's not super common either. It's not a Steve or a John, you know? And so it's like, there's a kid in Scouts who's kind of a, what's the word I want to look for? We'll say troublemaker. We'll call it the nice way to say it. And so his dad's yelling at him all the time. And so it's just, Dad! And every time I can't help it, I turn around. And like, I know it. Like, I know he's there, and I tell myself, chill out. It's not you. But every time he yells Seth, I turn around and look.
Right.
I can't help it.
Yeah, it's a common thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just funny.
Maybe to you.
It's weird to me, but I don't think of what else I had.
Somebody else yelling my same name that I can't help but respond.
Right, but I don't know. I guess I'm of the assumption that if, like, you're a John, you're a little less reactive to it because there's so many Johns.
I would say they have the same reaction you do.
I'll have to ask John.
They hear their name, and they turn around and automatically think that maybe someone that's calling them.
Perhaps.
Anything else?
I mean, same thing like hanging out at doing Scouts and somebody else's dad. I jumped to that too. So
right.
Maybe it's just me.
It's just you being receptive. You're listening.
I'm trying. So my oldest birthday party this afternoon. So a bunch of 11, 12-year-olds hanging out at the house. Nerf Battle Royale. It was great. And so, like, I call everybody over. It's like, all right, everybody come here. Here's the plan. Here's what we're doing. There's only one rule. You're not allowed to die. Go. Just don't die. Don't die in my yard. I want no death. And that was good enough for them.
Good rule.
We succeeded. There was no death.
Don't die.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. There's more stuff. Again, you hadn't had a chance really to listen to it because I released it this afternoon or this morning. But that party chair show last night or semi-party chair show was interesting. Like, I don't know. Like,
I'm with you. It's interesting to get their take on, how they actually see the party.
It should be
how it is and how they expect it to be.
Well, but it's like,
because it's been ever changing, even over the past.
And that's fine. And again, I get the idea that the party represents the constituency, and that constituency changes over time, and it's the party's responsibility to either change with that constituency or stick to their platform in order to conserve the brand. Because that's the issue to me. Like, again, this is the capitalist me with my capitalist hat on. When you build a brand, whatever it is, that Nike swoosh, it means something. When people see that swoosh, it means something. When you see the Tesla T, when you see the whatever that cross thing is that Chevy has, it's
called a bow tie.
Is it a bow tie?
That's weird. Yeah, they call it a bow tie.
Anyway, whatever that thing is, you see the little star pattern that is the Subaru logo. Like, it means something. Companies spend big time money,
right,
to make that logo stand for something. And part of that is marketing, part of that is advertising, part of that is commercials, but part of that is their product, what type of products they do, the quality of the products that they put out regularly. Because McDonald's means something. It's not the best fucking burger on the planet. Right. It's a McDonald's burger.
It's what you associate with that brand.
Right. And so, again, it's one of those things I try to relate it to things I do understand. So that Nike swoosh means a thing. Nike spends millions of dollars a year on brand, making their brand mean something to the public. And that helps them sell their product. What is the R after a name on a ballot if it's not a brand? But what is the brand that R is trying to be? There's no answer other than D's wrong. And then brand D is our brand is wrong. Brand R is wrong. That's the thing I was trying to get to yesterday with that whole show, and I couldn't get there. Like, I couldn't get it out of either one of them.
I mean, I would honestly argue that both sides live in that vagueness of it, in that broad association
what's the
of
point?
the R and the broad association of the D.
But what's the point of that to me and you as a voter if it doesn't mean like a thing? It's a very fluid term. It's a very loose whatever. And Matt made a good point. He's like, you part of the problem with the way I look at this, and this was Matt picking at me, and I appreciate it from him, is that I have an assumption that the R's and the D's all move together when told.
All right. Yeah.
Which they do sometimes, not all the time. When it's the big flashy stuff, they do, because it's the political stuff. That's the stuff that you get elected on. But when it's other stuff in the background, like, I don't know, another $1 trillion for the Department of Defense, the R and the D work together. It's fine. Whatever. And that's a fair critique from Matt on me, is that, yes, I have an assumption that the R's are all the same. And so when a topic comes up that they're voting on, they're going to act the same. Because if they're not, then what's the point? Again, what's the point of the R or the D if it doesn't mean anything? Because it doesn't actually mean anything. The number one Republican on the planet is Donald Trump. And for all intents and purposes, he's not a Republican as I understand a Republican to be. So what does the R after Donald Trump's name mean? Nothing. It doesn't mean anything. So why is it there? What good is it doing? Because we vote on that. We make decisions on that. And I say we, not me and you, but we, the masses.
It's an idea. Like I said, I think it's purpose. Okay. I mean, at this point, I would think it's almost purposefully meant to be ambiguous, to gather in a wider swath of people.
I get what you're saying. But
it's like, oh, you're Republican.
So what does the R mean?
Okay,
to you?
you're good. You're good with me.
Or what does the D mean to you? When you see when you're flipping, like, okay, because you like to watch. I won't say like to watch, but you'll watch the state house stuff, right?
Yeah.
And it'll be Rep whatever D, Davidson County, right? So the person's name, the D, where they're from. So all other information on that bar, we understand what that is. That is who the person is. That's their name. Davidson County is where they're from. What does the D in brackets mean?
Democrat.
Yes. But what does it mean? Like, what does that tell you about them? The topic on the table is...
It can only give you a generalization.
But what is the generalization that you get? That's what I'm asking. Like, okay, like pick a topic that you watched some footage on in the State House. A bill that was up about whatever.
Trying to think of that's coming up recently. There's, of course, been a lot they've been voting on.
The only thing to me, the only thing that D means is that's an indicator to you, who's watching it, on if you like or don't like what they're doing, you like or don't like the D's, right? Because it doesn't necessarily say what their stance is on the topic.
Seen that way, but I think it's more in the actual their agreement with PBS or whatever. I think they do it. I mean, just if you're watching C-SPAN or any other kind of like nonprofit. Well, sorry, I guess both are federally funded, but it's more just to indicate who that person is. But they also put whether they're a Republican or Democrat or independent behind their name. Why exactly they do it?
Right. What is that? Like that bar is full of information, but what is that one chunk of information for? Like, what is that? How does that inform you as a watcher, as a spectator? What is that one thing, one part of that set of information? Because they could put put 39 in there and tell you their age. Does that tell you something about them as a person or what they're going to do on a topic?
I mean, I honestly don't think that throwing the R or the D behind their name is trying to imply anything whatsoever.
Then why is it there?
If you're watching it, you can see how exactly they're feeling about a certain topic.
Sure. I agree with you 100%. But I think I think it'd be, my assumption would be that somebody watching that, whatever the topic is, and this person is whatever D, Davidson County, if they're promoting the topic at hand, that with the D next to their name, you assume that D's are on board with that topic. That's a D issue. That's a pro. D's are pro on this issue. Now, whether the R comes up next and agrees with them 100%, it doesn't matter. The implication's already made. Because it's not any preemptive value. It doesn't tell you what they're going to say about a topic unless it's something very basic and simple that's clear on that has party lines to it. But it's a piece of information that is added to the screen that has no real value. And I don't know why. And why would you ask for that to be on there if you didn't want to be associated with that, and you only want to be associated with that because that's an electability issue? Because you want, because again, we like, as I went back and forth with them yesterday, it's like I got to the point where I was like, this is like baseball, right? So Team R is the Yankees. You have pitchers and catchers and first base. And,
we also put left hand, right hand.
Right. So they're not the same. There's a little bit of skew. They have different thoughts and whatever. They have different specific jobs that they do inside the game. But the only point is to win the game and to get more people on your team playing the game. It's to win the game. But what does winning the game do for me and you? That's where, again, I know it's an annoying question I ask all the time, but what good is this for me? How does this system promote me? And I don't mean me personally. Well, I do, but I don't mean me exclusively personally.
So it sounds like it.
I mean me in the broad sense of me. But me as part of the populace, yes, but not me as in one me only. And that's the issue I take in it. Like, it doesn't tell me anything. Mayor Jacobs he's a paying libertarian, a shitty one, but he's a libertarian. He pays his bills, and by bylaws, he shouldn't be a Republican. He shouldn't be allowed to be a Republican because
Let's petition him then.
Huh?
Let's petition him then.
I mean, there's nobody running against him.
Ah, shit.
We can't kick him off the ballot. We could take the R maybe off.
Okay.
But we would have to get the county Republican Party.
We would have to have done that before the primaries.
No, we could do it now, but the Republican Party would have to.
Was he on the primaries?
Yeah, you have to primary, just primary nobody. But we'd have to get the county executive committee to say, yeah, you know what, you're right, he's not a Republican. We can't. It's not the election commission. There's no third party that's going to mediate this. It's the Republican Party. Who it's in their interest to let him stay there and let him stay as a Republican because he's at least winning. Yeah. And some of his core, I mean, he's a conservative Republican, at least functionally. He's not a libertarian. But I don't know. I'd be curious to see what he says about this Roe Wade issue.
Don't foresee him weighing into it.
I mean, I wouldn't have ever him, but I don't know. I just think I think it doesn't. I mean, again, Matt put me on another good question. It's like, well, the parties are going to exist. And like, it's fine. I don't mind the parties exist. I don't need the primary. I want to get rid of the party's primary. We pay for it with taxes. And it's exclusionary, even though it's inclusive. And I don't like that. Because I think the inclusivity of it is a farce. I think it's a false sense of inclusion. It's not a real inclusion. Because at the end of the day, I don't. If I understood it correctly, they're not obligated to accept primary results. I mean, the Gina Oster one, the Gina Manis one. I mean, the primary results said Eddie won it, and Gina's argument was that a bunch of not Republicans voted for Eddie Manis, and that's why he won it. What else is going on? Well, that's. I don't know how else to beat that dead horse other than I just don't think it, we talked about it last week. I think a rate choice. I think a nonpartisan primary. Like, we can have as many parties as we want. People can affiliate all they want. I just don't think, I don't think they should be open primaries. I think if, like the Libertarian State of Tennessee Libertarian Party, if they could
I think the open primaries would give the option to a more literally open primary as far as what you're going to run as.
I mean, I think, well, an open primary, yes, but an open primary being city style. Anybody who wants to run for county commission seat 3 puts in their paperwork, go in for primary day, and everybody that put in their petition you get to vote for. Doesn't matter what party they are. Like, I'm sure there's some technical terminology that we're missing here in that there is. Because, I mean, Randy was telling me that there are some states where the local party gets to vet your application for partiness. So you go just register to vote, and then you go to the party and say, I'm a Republican, and then the Republicans' executive committee has to accept your application for you to be able to go pick up Republican primaries. It's essentially, that'd be the long way of doing a convention to get a candidate. And I mean, again, I think if you're going to have the party, do a convention, and you put your party out. You put your player out. And so the Republicans do a convention, they put their player out. The Democrats do a convention, they put their player out. A couple of independents. Libertarian Party does it. Everybody gets the little number or letter after their name, whichever letter they want. And that means whatever it means to whoever it means anything to. 7 people come to the primary. We go to the booth. We pick from the 7 people which one we want. And the top 2 go to the general. Or we rank choice it. We pick 1 through whatever. And
goes through from there.
Right. Either way. I'm ready to cut short. I'm tired. We had a long fucking day. So, yeah, I think that's it. Go pee. I'll do an outro.
Do it.
Yeah, so short show this week. Sorry, guys. Not really. You got a bonus episode with the party-ish chair thing-ish. Daniel sucks for not showing up, but it wasn't his fault. Well, I don't know. Guy's busy, so I'm not important enough to drop everything for him.
Matt didn't show up.
No, Daniel didn't show up, and Randy sat in for him. Okay. Outro. All right, so we're almost in agreement, everybody. Hey, we did a show, a little bit of a short show. Happy Cinco. If you celebrate Cinco, check out the Compass Show. I hope everybody went out and had a good time voting and being part of that process, and it's going to continue on, and we're going to have more elections. We know who the general ballot is. I might try real hard to sneak a debate or 2 in, but we'll see. I'm not going to try too hard. It's just not... I don't know. I'm exhausted. Almost Agreement at gmail.com. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Go to the website, almostagreement.com. Check out my voter guide 22. I'll do some updates to it shortly. Happy Mother's Day, everybody. All the moms out there. My mother, my super awesome wife, because she's a mom to my super awesome kids. I hope you guys appreciate your moms, because the moms are, kind of pretty awesome most of the time. I know, that's the show. That's what we do. Like, share, friend, podcast provider, that whole thing. Go check out the Compass podcast as well. It's free on any of your podcast providers. You can get it there. And then check them out to actually subscribe to them at some point, too. So, almost in agreement, everybody. Have a great night. Bye.